Greetings. Good morning. Glad you're here. Today is part two from 2 weeks ago of choosing to be bitter or better. And the Bible's, it's called the gospel, and most of you know this, but that means good news, and for good reason. Number one, it's God speaking to us. The only way we know how to be saved is by reading His Word. And Paul says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel because the power of God unto salvation. But it's even more than just salvation. There are people, perhaps you know some, maybe someone's in here now. There are people that don't know you can break out of bitterness and negativity. They think that's just part of their personality, and they think they're going to be slaves to bitterness all their lives. And we have so much good news in here because God tells us that's not the case. We have the good news on how to have peace with God, peace with each other, joy, and betterness instead of bitterness. So that's our subject for today. So every trial, every negative circumstance or experience we have has an influence on us. I mean, social scientists have documented this clear back in the 90s. They'll monitor people. They'll choose a topic for a husband and wife to talk about, or other people, and they'll give them little dials. And anytime the other person says something that they perceive as a negative that kind of affects them, they'll turn the dial one way, and the other person says something that's uplifting, they'll turn it the other way. And rarely, according to social scientists, rarely does any interaction between two human beings rarely ever is it negative. Is it neutral? Rarely ever. Almost all interaction, but especially those that are of conflict or stressful, they affect everybody that's involved in that. They have an influence on us. So the gospel talks about that just a little bit. Let's first look at Romans chapter 5. Get this going. Romans chapter 5, verse 3 and 4. Paul's writing this is not only this, speaking to all Christians, but we also exult. It's kind of like a holy bragging. It's a proudness of God. So we also exult in our tribulations. That means pains, trials. And knowing that our tribulation brings about perseverance, proven character, hope. One of the most important things a human being can have is hope, and when we lose our hope, life is miserable. So just a point here. We exult in our tribulations. That doesn't mean we enjoy them. Oh, that hurts so good, hit me again. That's not what exalt means in tribulations. We exalt in our tribulations, in the trials and the pains we have, because of what we expect to happen. We expect good to happen. We expect for these things to come about. Perseverance means endurance and strength and patience, and we expect from our tribulation to grow in that, in our proven character. And what does a person have if they don't have integrity or character? And then in hope, we all need that. And so he says we exult in it not because of the pain, but because of what God says it will bring about. These tribulations will bring about. So here's one verse I'm showing to say this. Although many people probably outside the church don't know this, anytime we have a negative experience, anytime we experience relationship pain, we have a choice what it will do to us. We have a choice what to do to it. We have a choice to say, okay, it is what it is, but I'm going to choose to be better because of it. I'm going to choose to grow because of it in perseverance and proven character and hope. I choose to be better, even though I hate the circumstance, I hate the stress, I hate all that's going on right now in this scenario, I choose. The Bible also says we can, I'm paraphrasing, but you'll see it in the context. The Bible also teaches that we can choose to be bitter. And so it says in Hebrews 12:15, which we looked at 2 weeks ago, see to it that no one comes short of the grace of God. We're saved by the grace of God. If we come short of it, that means we're not right with Him. Our soul is lost at the moment. He goes on to say, see to it that no one comes short of the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springing up causes trouble. And we talked about a root and dandelion roots, how pervasive they are. And it only takes 1 inch of a dandelion root to completely regenerate the entire plant. They're hard to get rid of. So is the root of bitterness. Don't let it happen. Don't let it start growing in your heart. I did once, as I shared with you, that I had depression once in my adult life over 20 years ago. It really damaged my family, my wife, myself, my friends. It was the worst pain that I've ever experienced. And I didn't know it, but the gospel teaches us we don't have to put up with that. So I showed these buttons 2 weeks ago, that anytime we have a painful experience or a tribulation or a trial, we get to choose what the end result is. We get to choose whether, I'm so angry, I'm just going to stay bitter, or we get to choose bitter. We get to choose bitter, and I may have said it last time, but bitter means unforgiving. I'm not going to let them off the hook. And the crazy thing about bitterness, and I've been there, as I told you, when we remain bitter, it's like drinking poison, hoping it will hurt the other person. Who does it hurt when we drink poison? Us. And the same with bitterness. It just, physically, it damages us, relationally. So we have a choice. And choosing to be better, of course, is what we're striving for, and what the good news of the gospel is about, is to be better. So what I'd like to do, let me just quickly look at my notes right here. We're going to look at least one, but if time permits, we're going to look at maybe 2 Bible events that show this. The first one I've never studied before, but it's about Moses and the children of Israel out in the wilderness. And God has delivered them from Egypt, slavery and bondage out of Egypt. And we'll begin reading in Exodus 15, and that was the reading that Kurt read for us. Exodus 15, 22 through 27. We'll stop at 25, but you can study further if you like. So here we go. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Couple of thoughts. What direction did they decide to go? Who decided on that? Well, if you like context, and if this is all you read, you might say, well, Moses led them. You'll see later on that he didn't lead them. He walked in front, which we'd call, hey, he's leading the group. He's leading the way. But we're going to ask the question, who made the decision which way to go? Right? They crossed the Red Sea. You can go 180 degrees. Who made the decision which direction to go? We'll get to that. So they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now, the human body can, some people are stronger, but the human body can go about 3 days without water in the desert max, without it damaging your kidneys irreparably. People will die. Now, you're a professional nurse, and so is wherever you went. Have they changed that? Are they still saying, no, it's still about 3 days without water, especially in a hot environment? Okay, thank you, Andy. So now, does that mean they didn't? I get too detailed, forgive me. Doesn't mean they were 3 days without water. They went 3 days without finding it. Certainly when they left Egypt, they probably took a day or two of water with them. But by now, the supply is low. Been traveling 3 days in the desert and no water. They're concerned. What happens next? Verse 23. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, it was named Marah. That's what Marah means. Bitter. What I'd like you to do now, I just find it so helpful when I do it. I'd like to ask you for the moment to be an Israelite. You cross the Red Sea with the Egyptians following you. God opens it up. You get across, God brought it back on the Egyptian soldier. I'd like you to try to feel, see, understand the details of the things going on. So they couldn't drink the water. I don't know if it was poisonous. It kind of implies that, because you can drink. I drink coffee, and I don't like the taste of coffee, but it doesn't kill you quickly anyway, that I understand. So they're probably dangerous. They couldn't drink it. So here's my question for you. How did they end up at Marah? How'd they get there? Who decided? Who chose the direction? Moses didn't have a compass. They didn't have compasses back then. Why did they end up there if God's their God and he lets them go 3 days without finding any water at all? How'd that happen? You think the Israelites asked that? How could God let that happen? Of course he did. That's what we do sometimes, right? I'm a good person, huh? I'll ask it again, who was directly responsible for the dangerous situation of being in the desert without water? Who's responsible? And if you were there, be there right now if you possibly can, don't answer out loud. I'm just going to ask you to answer in your head. What physical features would you see at Marah? You're at Marah right now. There's the water right there. What do you see? Well, 1.5 million to 2 million Israelites. You see that? You see the waters of Marah. You see that? Anything else that really stands out? Big time, yes, right? You look and guess what's fairly near the waters if it's daytime? The pillar of cloud. Right? The pillar of cloud. If it's night, the pillar of fire. You couldn't miss it. The people are saying, grumbling at Moses, saying, what shall we drink? That pillar of cloud, how wide do you think it was? Now, Michael, thank you for getting me the picture. Michael created it or had it created on AI, if I remember correctly, but let's go up to the picture right there. This is the pillar of cloud. Look, no one knows how high it went. We know it went down and filled the tabernacle. We've talked about that before. And people couldn't even go inside while it was full of the cloud of the glory of God. But how wide was it? Well, if we go back and read Exodus 13:21, no, that's not the one I want. I asked you who led the children of Israel? God did. Moses, he walked in front. But look at what it says. The Lord was going before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them on the way. God is leading them. And in a pillar of fire by night. Who chose to go to Marah? God did. To lead them on the way. By the way, when they leave Marah, immediately they go to an oasis with 12 springs. A spring is running water, 12 springs, one for each tribe, and 70 date trees, and it was an oasis. But God chose to take them to Marah first. Not Moses, but it was God's decision to go to Marah first. So here's that cloud. And we know that the cloud in Exodus 14:20 was so big that when the children of Israel were leaving Egypt, right, 101.5 mil to 2 mil guesstimates, Egyptians had a change of heart and said, let's go kill them. That's my wording, but let's go get them. The children of Israel see them eventually, and they're in a bind because behind them is the Red Sea. No place to go that way. In front of them is the massive, probably the most powerful army in the world, the Egyptians. And what do? Well, this is a minor detail, but that night, the pillar of fire went from in front of the Israelites to behind them and separated the Israelites from the Egyptians. It wasn't just 50 feet wide or 75 feet wide. It must have been massive to stop the Israelites. This is Exodus 14:20. It stopped the Egyptians from reaching the Israelites. Massive. But I like this. How are you going to show a massive cloud? All you'd see would be cloud, right? It'd be kind of a boring picture. But God, in his awesomeness, in his power, stopped the Egyptians, told Moses to do his thing, and God opened up the Red Sea. This was a massive cloud. Yes, it is Exodus 14:20. I'll read it for you. So it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, and there was a cloud, and there was the cloud along with the darkness, yet it gave light at night. Thus one did not come near the other. The Egyptians didn't come near the Israelites. 25. Then that's Moses. Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, and he threw it into the waters, and the waters became sweet. And there he made for them a statute and a regulation, and there he tested them. This was a test. God made the waters of Marah. He knew right where they were, and he directed them to them to test them. Intentionally. Does he give you tests in your life? I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? Of course he does. We can read about it. We can read about the testing in James chapter 1, 2 through 4. But he's testing them now to see, will they live? Will they trust him? And what did they do? They failed the test. They grumbled. Well, you let us out here. We're going to die of thirst. And God planned to lead them to Marah, planned to give them the water they needed, which he did do. But he tested them, as he does every one of us, maybe not every day, but frequently all of us get tested. Will we trust God this time? And many of you, he does and can. How would they react to the disappointment of the bitter water? I asked you what they saw. What would you see if you were there? You would see the people, you'd see Marah, maybe some mountains in the background. And you'd see the cloud. How big a deal is that? When God put the cloud between the Israelites and the Egyptians, it was impressive and massive, and the Egyptians didn't even think about going through it. They couldn't have. He opened the sea. The Israelites walked through. They see the sea collapse on the Egyptians. How long has it been? Just don't answer, but raise your hand. Do you know how long it's been since the Israelites experienced walking on dry ground at least 300 feet deep? There's a shallow spot where they think they know there's a land bridge. They think that's where Israel went through, but the rest of it's 1,500 feet deep. They saw this 2 walls of water. How long has it been since they've seen that spectacular miracle? Raise your hand if you know. You don't have to say it out loud. 3 days. Then Moses led. The then is right after the sea collapsed. They just left Egypt. Now Moses leads them from the Red Sea where the sea collapsed. And they went out in the wilderness 3 days. 3 days. They saw this incredible miracle. Oh, you led us out here to be killed. They're crying to Moses. And then God delivers them. 3 whole days. And a God who can open up a sea, can't he change the water from bitter to better? And they forgot. You ever forget? You ever lose perspective? You ever forget about God's protection? You ever forget about his promises? It's just so easy to do, but man, apparently most of them did, and it's only been 3 days since they got to see that, and not long before that, they saw the other 10 plagues and miracles that God did. And they're complaining. They failed the test, unfortunately. Hey, every one of us has failed the test. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So not knocking them. I might have been the worst one of them all, but they failed. God tested them, and they failed the test. The waters, so he shows Moses the tree. Moses throws it in, the water becomes sweet. There's a lot of, in religion, and I hope we're not religion, I hope we're God's people. That's what I hope. If you're visiting with us, if you have questions, please ask us. We want to keep our services simple, full of honor, full of, Jesus says they must worship God in spirit and truth. That's our goal. We want to be correctable. We want to be better and not bitter. So here we are at Marah, and the commentators, I shake my head. Some of them say, well, there's one kind of plant they think, a tree that's in that area, and they break off the branches, and then they throw it in the water, and the sap of the tree mixes with the minerals in the water, whether it was calcium and I don't remember what the minerals were, and they all fall to the bottom of the pond, and it's drinkable. They'd be selling a lot of those trees if they existed. But it's immaterial. It's irrelevant. The hand of God, however he did it, most likely just by saying it, he made the water sweet. He wanted them to trust him, and hopefully they will the next time. In James chapter 1, it says, "Consider all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, pains, struggles, tribulations, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance." We read a verse like that similar earlier today. The testing of your faith produces endurance. Let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete and lacking nothing. One thing that I hate to insult your intelligence, but I need to remind myself. This is not automatic. Consider all joy when you encounter various trials, knowing that the test of your faith, that's not automatic. You can choose, like the Israelites did, to not trust God, to be better. So this is implying, if we read more, because it talks about doing things through faith, if we read more, and we won't, we see that this is, trials bring about endurance for someone who wants it to bring about endurance. Someone loves God, who's working on their faith. And I know I'm not perfect, Lord, but I want to make this one better. I want to make you happy how I handled my trial. So just pointing that out right there. We are all tested, and this is speaking to all Christians right there. There was a time, some of you might recall this, I don't know if it's common knowledge or not, but there was a time when before the Soviet Union broke back up into the countries it was made up out of, the Soviet Union sent cosmonauts, they call them cosmonauts, we call them astronauts, but they sent cosmonauts out into space for long periods of time, many months. And it was amazing, it was shocking. When they came back, strong men, elite physical and mental specimens. Strong men, trained and disciplined, were suddenly unable to walk. Too weak to stand from being in outer space, their muscles severely atrophied. Why? Because in space there is no gravity. And where there is no gravity, there's no resistance. And where there's no resistance, the body deteriorates. So the Soviet invented something unusual. They invented what they call the penguin suit. You can look this up on AI. It does a pretty good job. And it's a suit that covers the entire body, and except for the face, and full of elastic bands. And it's slightly flexed, I can't remember which direction, so that if they want to just eat something, they have to fight against the elastic bands. And I don't know, it doesn't tell me how many pound force, but every move they made, every walk, when they walked in the spaceship, they fight against this strain, this resistance. And no one likes resistance that I know of. No one likes to strain when you don't have to. But as unpleasant as it was to make every single movement difficult, it kept them healthy. When they started coming off in the future flights, because they went on a lot of long space shots, they were much healthier. They didn't have to go through months of rehabilitation. Didn't have to be carried off. Some of them couldn't walk at all. They had to be carried off the space capsule because of resistance, because of stress, because of a trial. And it worked. It worked. So here's the truth, a truth. That the very thing that they would naturally avoid, hardship, became the very thing that preserved them. So I want to suggest to you today something you know already, but God has not designed you to live without resistance. Our faith doesn't shine when we're playing video games or at Disneyland very often. I mean, that's easy. Our faith shines when we act like God's children under stress and under trials. And so I want to say another thing. The resistance is not our enemy. It's part of our environment, part of God's plan for our lives to have resistance, trials, tribulations. So we read James's words right there, and he says so. Consider it all joy, and again, not because it's fun, right? But because of the end result, what trials bring about. That's what we're studying today. This is the good news. Because if somebody converts you to Jesus and they tell you that everything is roses and popsicles and all this kind of thing, and then you get shocked that, hey, I shall have problems. Yeah, that's part of God's design. We get to go home someday. No trials. But while we're here, trials proving our love for God. So resistance is not our enemy. It's part of our environment, as I said. And trials, even though it's hard for me to believe this, trials are not interruptions. Trials are part of the design of life. We don't like them. They seem like it is interruptions. So when you walk into a gym and you see someone lifting weights, we have some weightlifters in here. You don't feel sorry for them, do you? No. They choose to. You understand something. The resistance is the point. They're out there pumping the iron for resistance, to tear little microfibers in their muscles so the muscles will repair even stronger than they were before. But resistance is what makes people in the gym stronger, and so we don't feel sorry for them. Likewise, Jesus tells us that we trials. In Luke 14:27, I don't have this on the PowerPoint, but he says, whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. The cross, hey, you know this, I know this, that the life of a Christian is the best there is. We have more peace, more joy than is possible without God. But it's not carefree and it's not trial-free, right? So Jesus says, you pick up your cross, and when you need to, you make the sacrifice that is necessary to be my disciple. So, a couple of things here. Here's just a little chart, pretty simple, and we're not going to get to our second story. But a bitter person, we're looking at the contrast between bitter and better people. There are distinct differences. I've been in both camps. A bitter person replays the hurt. They wronged me, and it's serious stuff. And they make bad hormones, cortisol and other yuckies. They replay the hurt over and over, and lots of studies on this. They focus on what was lost. They blame others, harden their hearts, done all those, guilty. Not anymore. It's been over 20 years. A better person looks for the good to come. Trusts his purpose, trusts God's purpose by his. Learns obedience, softens their heart. It just makes us better. How am I doing? You know, we are going to take time. I think I can do it in 3 minutes. I want to end on a really cool Bible event. 2 weeks ago, we looked at David, a man after God's own heart who wasn't at the moment. 1 Samuel 25. He asked Nabal, he'd protected Nabal's flocks, protected his shepherds, and he asked Nabal, hey, could you spare whatever your heart has? Could you spare my men some lambs, so we could feast? Nabal not only says no, if you were here 2 weeks ago, you know that he went out of his way to insult David. Pretty bad insult. 1 Samuel 25. David tells 400 of his 600 men, strap on your swords, and may God do to my enemy, David's enemies, even more if I don't kill every male belonging to Nabal. This means servants. We don't think he had any children. It doesn't matter. Household, killed all of them. And these servants, they spoke highly of David. They liked David. They said, hey, he protected our flocks. And David's going to slaughter every man, even the innocent ones. And Abigail brought him some food and things and talked him out of it. He says, anyway, it's a cool story. But I want to move on. Now we're going to see why God calls David a man after his own heart. Because in 1st and 2nd Samuel, chapter 1, when David finds out that his enemy, the one who'd been chasing him at least a couple years, when he finds out that King Saul, who put huge resources into killing David because he didn't want David to become king, as though he could stop God's will, he was killed by the Philistines. And his sons, Jonathan's closest friend, David's closest friend, Jonathan. To start with it, this is in 2 Samuel chapter 1. You remember what David did when he found out his life was no longer in danger? Do you know what David did when he found out that his enemy was dead? He wept and he mourned and fasted until evening, because David loved his enemies and he was a man after God's own heart. I love that. So we see at one moment he's going to kill innocent people. Not long after that, he mourns for those that wanted to kill him. He cared for them. David didn't tell us, I mourned. The Holy Spirit said he mourned. And we're talking God is testifying to David's sorrow when his enemy died. That's choosing to be better when it's much easier to be bitter. We'll close there. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you were edified and blessed. We were by having you here. I mean, a few of you look forward to meeting more of you. So at this time, I'm going to offer the invitation. If you're new with this, that just means if you need prayers, you have some spiritual needs, you'd like to know more about becoming a Bible Christian, then let us know that. Christian's going to lead us in a song, and as he does, I'll ask you to stand now and just come forward if we can help you at all.